My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. Robert Browning was born in Camberwell, London, England on May 7, 1812, and passed away in Venice, Italy on December 12, 1889. He was an English poet and playwright whose mastery of dramatic verse, especially dramatic monologue, made him one of the foremost Victorian poets.
Here's some vocabulary to help you better understand the poem. Frau Pandolf was an artist who painted the Duchess. Countenance is an expression or a look of the face. Durst is to have courage or boldness. Officious is ready to serve or obliging. Trifling, of very little importance. Forsooth is expressing disbelief in a truth or fact, and munificence is very generous.
That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Frau Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will't please you sit and look at her? I said Frau Pandolf, by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, that depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain drawn for you, but I. And it seemed as though would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus, Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only, called that spot of joy the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Frau Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy.
She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace. All and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not know how. As if she ranked my gift of a 900-year-old name with anybody's gift, who stooped to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such a one, and say, just this, or that in you disgust me, here you miss or exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wit to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, and then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop.
Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Will you please rise? We'll meet the company below, then. I repeat, the Count your master, munificence, is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed. Though his fair daughter's self, as I have vowed, as starting is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which claws of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
This poem is spoken through the Duke's perspective towards an assumed audience, and he's describing his past wife in a sarcastic manner. The Duke is critically admiring the mural of his dead wife and how it led to her demise.
The poem My Last Duchess by Robert Browning takes place in the 16th century in northern Italy. The poem talks about events that are occurring presently in the Duke of Ferrara's life. The Duke, who is speaking in a dramatic monologue, entertains a supposed audience by recounting the actions of his previous wife. Through the use of sarcasm and intense diction, the Duke is able to portray his dissatisfaction with his previous marriage while trying to negotiate a new one, hoping that the same mistakes will not happen again.
The beginning of the poem is basically describing the painting and begins the story of the Last Duchess.
In this passage of the poem, the Duke is basically showing off his palace to the Countess company, and we assume that the Duke is showing off his supposed audience the portrait, and then he goes into detail about it. So while he is describing the portrait of his Duchess, he uses a mocking tone that helps reveal his attitude towards her disgraceful behavior. And at first, the Duke talks about Frau Pandolf, who is a painter, and how he painted the portrait, but later goes on to detail about his wife. And there's phrases such as looking as if she were alive and must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat that show that the Duchess is no longer alive.
In the second passage, the Duke goes in depth about his Duchess's lack of respect. Here, he claims that she flirted with everyone and had a promiscuous personality. Through lines 27 to 32, the Duke says that some officious fool, that represents the Duchess's other lovers, were constantly trying to win her heart over. Furthermore, the bow of cherries in line 27 is supposed to represent sex. In context, the Duke believes his wife is having sexual relationships with other men. Seen as a pompous character since he says that she does not respect his gift of a 900-year-old name. This section is generally describing what the speaker thought about his wife.
Here we learn that the Duke caused the Duchess's death. He says that he would never stoop to her level and would not allow such disgrace or disrespect upon his name, which leads him to have her killed. This means that he had her killed. He finally ends his rant about his new wife by stating, "There she stands as if alive," and returns back to reality to arrange a new marriage. Lines 47 to 53 describe the Duke negotiating a new marriage with the secretary of the Count in order to marry the Count's daughter. The last 4 lines, from "Nay will go" to "Bronze for me," the Duke uses a comparison of Neptune to a seahorse to display how he wanted to have control over his wife.
This is concentrated around 2 big topics, power and control. The Duke believes that because of his status, he should be able to control everyone and everything, and that he must always be respected by everyone. He rules with an iron fist, both with his country and with his Duke, or else they must face the consequences. In this case, since his wife did not respect his authority and his name, she faced her early demise, which was death. His severe jealousy and lack of control towards what he believes to be his subjects contributes to the idea that those in power demand much more than they could possibly get. The of the poem is dark and sarcastic. The Duke uses somewhat playful words to contradict himself and hide his true feelings from his audience. The speaker uses subtle words such as joy into the Duchess's cheeks and earnest glance to portray that he was compassionate towards his wife, but these words are used to mask his true feelings towards her, which is one of hate and disgust.
The author incorporates irony in his poem through the use of enjambed rhyming couplets. Usually when an author uses enjambed sentences in his poem structure, it emphasizes the speaker's lack of control. This is ironic because the Duke tried so hard to have control over his wife, but in the end failed to have control over himself.
Allusions that the poet refers to are historical ones such as Neptune. He is known as a very powerful god who controlled the seas. This is supposed to reveal how the Duke wanted to be like Neptune and control his wife and everyone below him.
The Duke's paradoxical nature is revealed when he boasted how, at his command, the Duchess's life was ended. This reveals that he believed that in the end he still had control over her, even if it may seem like he may not have. Then he returns to admire her portrait, trying to make it seem like she had it coming for her and he was doing the right thing the entire time. There's also a simile when the Duke compares himself with Neptune and the seahorse.